Thank you, Victoria. Good morning, everybody. My name is Scott Belcher. I'll be the moderator today of this great panel. I mean, we've got a great panel focusing on data and fueling the future of transportation. And I'm really excited because we have April Wire, who from Maricopa County Department of Transportation, who's kind of taken some bold steps in trying to leverage AI and data to optimize their network. We have Jadish Patel, the CEO of Flow Labs, which is kind of one of the more progressive AI and network optimization firms out there that has done some really interesting things as it relates to the use of AI, but also as it relates to safety and climate change. And then Doug Gilmore from TomTom, one of the premier aggregators and providers of real-time connected vehicle data. And without that kind of data, none of the things we're going to talk about happen. So, I mean, I think just for those of you who don't know me, I was the CEO of ITS America for 7 years, and then I was the CEO of the Telecommunications Industry Association. And since then, I've worked with companies like Flow Labs and with public sector agencies in helping them deploy cutting edge technologies, which for the public agencies on the webinar, you know how challenging that can be from a procurement standpoint and from a risk management standpoint, and from the private sector, you can appreciate how difficult that can be sometimes in trying to just break in, because everybody has their vendors and they have their existing hardware and software systems. So data gives us a chance to kind of break through some of those gaps, and that's what I think is really exciting about this. Use of data in intelligent ways can provide more efficient operations, safer roads, and more environmentally friendly mobility. And when done right, you're not beholden to any proprietary hardware system. Every agency has their hardware systems and their hardware networks, but with the new cloud-based platforms, they can sit, the good ones can sit on top of the existing hardware systems, and so it really reduces the costs of kind of expanding your network in a cost-effective way. So I think, kind of from a big picture perspective, we really are kind of at a little bit of a precipice, in the sense that if we as transportation operators don't figure out how to use the data that we have and how to use it effectively and how to use it efficiently, make sure it's clean, make sure that we're managing it properly, make sure we're leveraging it, we're going to get left behind. We are left behind. My assessment, and this is purely subjective, but having spent a lot of time in technology, transportation tends to be a decade behind some of the other leading technology, users of technology. And so I think this panel and this point in time is really important. And so that's why I think one of the most interesting conversations will be with April, who has been willing to take that risk and been willing to kind of make that movement. And she can tell us not only about the good things that have happened, but also the risks and challenges and problems that they've faced. And then having Doug as kind of really the largest data aggregator out there right now. TomTom is providing the largest volume of connected vehicle data that's available, and one of the things that TomTom does better than most data aggregators is that they are is that they spend more time than most in kind of cleaning and managing that data. And I think that's critically important. And I'm gonna ask Doug to talk a little bit about that, because the problem, with data, good, first, data is good, data is better, but good data is way better. And so if you're just processing through uncleaned, unprocessed data, you're not likely making real progress. And so between TomTom and companies like Flow Labs, who spend an awful lot of time cleansing and optimizing the data, that's where you really get the benefits that we're going to talk about. So today, what we're going to do, we've got an hour. We're going to take 45 minutes for discussion, 15 minutes for Q&A. But having said that, I urge you all to, if you have questions, submit them through the course of the conversation, and I'll ask them as I can, because it's much better to have an ongoing dialogue than it is to everybody kind of rushing at the end. So feel free to weigh in. So again, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, their organization, and to tell me the most interesting thing that they did over the holidays, the holidays here in the the holidays, just so that just because it's fun. And with that, I'm going to start with Jadish, the CEO and founder of Flow Labs.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. I'm Jatish Patel. I'm the CEO and founder of Flow Labs. At Flow Labs, we help engineering teams and transportation agencies make data-driven decisions. We're a team of specialists in machine learning and artificial intelligence and software engineering. We've got decades of experience in developing cutting-edge transportation solutions designed to make transportation cleaner, clearer, and safer for everyone. Most interesting thing I did over the holidays, went to Puerto Rico for a few days to play golf, my first semi-foreign vacation for 5-6 years. It was great. Got to play a little bit of golf, but if you ever get a chance to go to Puerto Rico, golf courses are great and the seafood's fantastic.
And Jadish, you realize Puerto Rico is part of the United States, right?
That's why I say it's semi-foreign, because yeah, I misread the memo there on that one.
Next is April Wire, who's the Traffic Operations Branch Manager for Maricopa County Department of Transportation.
Hello, I'm April Wire. Like Scott said, I work for Maricopa County. We refer to it as McDOT, so you'll hear that quite a bit. So Maricopa County, for people that aren't familiar with our area, we are in Arizona. We encompass pretty much the entire Phoenix metropolitan area, so we are quite large. Fourth largest county by population of 4.2 million people. We have 27 cities and towns, so we're broken up very diversely. We encompass 9,200 square miles, and we are bigger than some states. So we have a very interesting geographic. We host a lot of large-scale special events and have a lot of seasonal fluctuations in traffic flows here in our area.
Most interesting thing for the holidays?
Most interesting thing. So I have 3 kids at home. They're fairly young still. So one of the things that we do over the holidays and to kind of kick off Christmas is a Christmas scavenger hunt. I think they believe it still comes from Santa, but we have miscellaneous clues spread around the house. This year we took it outside, put some clues in mailboxes, had some fun riddles in there, math problems, because my husband and I are both engineers, so we got to throw that in there, made them go for a walk, take the dog on a walk. So it's pretty fun.
That sounds great. How old are your kids?
They are 11, 7, and 9.
Great. Thank you. And then Doug Gilmore is a senior manager for business development of traffic and traveler information for TomTom.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and thanks to all those joining from around the world, and particularly in the US. So I'm joining you now from Amsterdam, where TomTom is headquartered. We are, as Scott mentioned, the largest aggregator of anonymous GPS data that nobody knows about. because we are very often working through partners and working through our long-term customers. We've been in the business of making maps and in the business of producing traffic data for more than 30 years. And our traffic products are renowned and have been used within the automotive sector for more than 18 years. I have the pleasure of working with the founder of and the inventor of those services in my day-to-day job. And as Scott mentioned, I manage business development for those traffic and travel products. And that's a much wider scope of products than it used to be. No longer just about providing live traffic information into vehicles, but also historic information for looking back at the past and how the road network performs. And then innovative products around hazards and safety and even emissions. Most interesting thing that I did over the holidays, well, the highlight for me was like April, I have 3 kids, and we bought a Lego Concorde to build, and first world problems, honestly. Fantastic model to build if anyone's a Lego fan, but first world problem is that we have nowhere to put it. It's more than 1.10 meters long. It's really, really huge. So having built it, we're going to take it apart and do it again.
Great. Hey, just a quick question before we dive into the formal question. Doug, how many OEMs are you collecting data from? Can you roughly?
Whoa. So the automotive business is a very complex one, and it has, I guess, lots of different layers of product within the kind of interface or the product that you use in your vehicle. So that's quite a hard question to answer, because over successive generations of vehicle technology, we have provided different technologies and different products. But in general, there are pretty much probably 3 I could put a finger on, 3 that we do not supply in some way or shape or form. In the US, certainly some of the largest firms are on our list of customers. So,
And do you have a sense of the level of penetration? Meaning,
yes, I noticed that some of the questions already flowing in or around the overall data levels, but in general, we see up to 25 to 35% penetration rates at peak times in the US on the highest road networks, highest flow networks. But even down to city level and urban streets, we're easily 15 to 20%. And that's overall across the globe. We're looking at intaking, ingesting, and using data from over 600 million unique probes every single day. In the US alone, we're looking at well over 150 million different trips every day that we see. Anonymized trips, of course. So we don't know. We don't know who they are. We don't know what kind of vehicle it is. We don't know what kind of device or generation of technology that is either. So I hope that answers the question.
no, that's great. That's what I was looking for. This scale is definitely, a magnitude higher than we were even 5 years ago. And that level of data gives a company like Flow Labs or another company the ability to do the kind of magic that they do with a level of confidence we didn't have before. So I appreciate that. April, can you tell us about the Maricopa County DOT and the Arizona Tech Regional Partnership, and how that works, what data you're collecting, the challenges that you faced gathering the data, and then in using the data to improve transportation?
Yeah, so Maricopa County itself only maintains the unincorporated area. So even though we have a lot of cities and towns in our boundaries and our geographic is quite large, our coverage area is quite small. So in Maricopa County, overall, in the Phoenix metropolitan area, we have about 4,100 traffic signals. We have 14 TMCs. So each city and town pretty much operates their own traffic signal infrastructure, roadways and whatnot. Through those TMCs, we were actually able to see about 3,900 of them. We have overall 230 dynamic message signs, and we share about 2,600 CCTV cameras. So we had this really large effort probably back in 1996 era when we were just starting in our ITS movement here in Arizona. So we had a large scale of deployments of fiber optic infrastructure, building on top of that, connecting our traffic signals through that fiber infrastructure, and then installing CCTV cameras on top of that. So Phoenix does have a unique partnership that we do share a lot of those fiber strands and also our CCTV coverage of those videos, so we can see what's going on our neighboring jurisdictions. For Maricopa County, that's really important because like we live in these pockets that are embedded within the Phoenix metropolitan area. And so a lot of the times we need to see what's going up the road just so that we can anticipate what's coming down our way. If there's, major closures on the freeway and traffic diverting onto our local streets, we really need a sense of what's going on. And so we're really lucky here in the Phoenix metropolitan area to have that shared traffic infrastructure. And so a lot of that was made possible through the Aztec partnership. So this partnership started in 1996 as part of the FHWA model deployment. I think we were one of maybe a dozen, and I think we might be one of the surviving members, honestly, from 1996. And so the overarching goal of the Aztec partnership has always been to focus on traffic management and operations, really through the deployment of ITS devices and TISMO strategies as we move forward. Through the Aztec Regional Partnership, there's 15 cities and towns that are included. We are highly monitored by FHWA and have their participation there. Our MPO, MAG, Maricopa Association of Governments, helps us with a lot of long-term planning aspects and helping us understand the federal funding process, because we do get a lot of the projects that we deploy and planning efforts that we do through federal funding. So the state DOT, ADOT is also included. Some of the surrounding counties sometimes are included. They're more of a just observing member. We have our universities and public transit also involved as well, because there's value in them being in the room too. So we've been leveraging this partnership since 1996, and a lot has changed. And so one of the initial deployments on top of infrastructure that we did was regarding event data. And so I think the need just came, like we have all these roadways, but we have this event data, but they don't overlay on top of each other. So we started probably in early 2000s to deploy kind of what you would call a data warehouse nowadays. And so we started with just getting the 911 data center feeds to understand where fire trucks were being deployed, right? Because a lot of times they're the first responder making it to the scene. So we can understand what do we need to do with our traffic signals, because a lot of them at that time were connected. So we can manipulate the signal timing from our traffic management centers without having to be on the site. So that really changed our process in our region. And so we saw great advantages of that and started moving down, getting more event data, and started growing in our work zone data space, getting a lot of construction permitting information. We have gaps as far as just like the duration of those permits and not the real accuracy of it, but the real time advantages of having that live data like that. So it's not quite live, but gives us an idea of what's going on out on our roadways so that we can make our adjustments appropriately. So we started down that path. More recently, we started working in the connected vehicle space more along the lines of hardware, traditional aspects when it comes to DSRC, and really growing that space and understanding the data that's coming in there. So for our region, we have built this huge data warehouse that houses, I don't even know, millions of events of data every year, but there's pitfalls in managing that for the region ourselves. Just as far as servers and hardware, we outgrow our capacity probably on a yearly basis, that we have to revisit that. Like Scott talked about a little bit earlier, transportation is probably a decade behind, right? If you think about your cell phone, like we're probably still, I don't know, maybe a few iPhone versions back, right? And it's hard for us to keep up because the reality of it is like, even my background, I'm a civil engineer, and a lot of my coworkers that have, grown in the ITS space are also civil engineers. So we don't really know the ins and outs of software all that well. It's just what we've, kind of figured out on our own, right? And so that space is starting to change a little bit, but it's hard to recruit those individuals that, are more data scientists or data analysts or software developers into our space, because quite honestly, I mean, the pay for government is never going to be what it is for our competitors in the consultant world. And on top of that, on our side, we're also experiencing civil engineering salaries, which is also very dramatically different than what a software developer or somebody along those lines could get nowadays in a more competitive market. So a lot of different gaps as far as workforce, as far as changing technology very quickly. It's hard for us to keep up on. We already have a backlog of work that needs to be performed, but that's why dashboards and transforming data into information is so critical for us right now, because we understand that in the Phoenix metropolitan area, we continue to grow and grow and grow. I think we're still considered one of the fastest growing counties in the United States, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. Our footprint is quite large because of urban sprawl and whatnot, but we still have room to grow. So people continue to come to, the glorious sunshine and the heat. So I don't see that changing anytime soon. But yes, dashboards like this have always been kind of on the forefront of our mind, because we've always aggregated and collected this data, but sometimes it's hard to understand how to put that into application. We have limited resources in just our space alone for people to look into bits and pieces of data. So we're really looking for insights that drive our operational choices on a day-to-day procedure. And then just understanding, like, a lot of the people that are coming into our space now may not have a transportation background or an ITS background. So how do we get those people actionable information that they can actually take action on? So it's a hard space to be in right now, but growing every day. So platforms like the one that Flow Labs creates and integrates with other data that isn't available, from a procurement aspect on our side, it is quite challenging. So we're always looking for new dashboards that can provide us with useful insights.
Thanks, April. Three really quick practical questions. Is your data lake, is it in the cloud or is it on-prem?
It is a hybrid. So we have some services that are still on-prem, and then we've started migrating over to cloud. But in government space, it's hard for me to digest sometimes, because I have grown up in a space where in transportation, you want to own the hardware, you want to own the data, you want to own the software, you want to own everything about it, right? And so as things are advancing and we're seeing even software as a service coming to light, we're starting to make that transition to be more virtual as well. But it's a hard transition for us government folks, honestly.
It totally is. And it's even harder because your vendors like that relationship too. I mean, they like you're sticky. They want to keep their relationship with you at all costs. And they want you to use their solutions. And so they don't necessarily play well with each other sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's second kind of practical question is, so you mentioned a number, I don't know if I counted them all, but it sounded like more than 30 agencies. Do they all have equal access to the data in the data lake? Or is that, can they all take that and use it with their vendors as they see fit?
So they still own all their data, right? So we just have APIs and different pulls from their servers and whatnot, like that data, but they own their data. They're able to do what they want with it, share it with whatever vendors they want to. We just have a regional agreement that we're going to push that, agency data up to our services that we have through Aztec, and there's certain features that, you know, certain insights that we're able to share with them, certain dashboards we're able to share with them that we use for more of a regional level. Like each agency definitely is the owner of their own data. We just work collaboratively to share that data with one another.
So they're keeping their data segregated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and then the last kind of practical question is, how much time and effort, if any, do you spend on data cleansing and data engineering?
So we try. We definitely rely on a whole lot of consultant support to do that. As we start ingesting new services, our new data, we quickly realize that it's a lot messier than we thought. Or we're also guilty of kickstarting a project as a pilot, not fully understanding the ins and outs of it, but we just want to get our feet wet. So it's rewarding and challenging all at the same time, because then that pilot progresses to be a full-blown project, and you never go back and clean up what you've started. So we try to do a lot of that, but we are still in our growing stages, even though we've had our data lake data warehouse since early 2000s. Like it's still a work in progress, and we are trying to improve that quality of data. The reliability of data continues to be an issue for us, but trying to overcome some of those things. So
I mean,
I'm going to say a lot of time is devoted to that. I can't quantify it per hour, but it's quite a lot.
Well, the
I
important.
may add to that as well, just if that's okay, Scott. But
absolutely, weigh in.
This is I like the way you've kind of likened the transformation of transit and transport management, traffic management from hardware towards software, in the same way as mobile phones have moved from Blackberries or Nokias to the iPhone. And as part of that, there has to be a refinement of the data that we use, and the data that is critical for the decision making, and that we do as consumers and as users of those devices. And it's the same in the transport world. This is genuinely a transformative moment, because we have bridging technology like the Flow Labs software, where I really see this bringing together two previously completely divided groups within the transport sector. The transport planners on the one hand, and the transport operators or traffic managers on the other. And in the past, they never used to talk to one another. One would manage the hardware that collected data, and occasionally, a planner would come in and seek a survey to then build a transport model, and then make a case for building and investing in the transport network. And now with things like the Flow Labs technology, you can do that in one place on one dashboard, using data that's not even not just from the hardware, but you can also use data that's been collected without the need for infrastructure. And to an extent, I think you're right, Scott. We are behind in transport because we're hung up on hardware, and that's the beauty, I guess, of things like connected vehicle data coming into the market, that we are able to collect that without the need for planning of surveys, for example, and we are able to collect that remotely in an anonymized fashion, and in an efficient way as well. Really very efficient at the end of the day.
So Doug, since you dove in here, let me just ask you a follow-up question then to that. So as one of the premier providers of connected vehicle data, and so you're feeding into the software platforms, how much effort does TomTom put in data cleansing and engineering? And is that an important thing that you do, or do you rely on either the agency or the software operator to do that data cleansing and engineering?
Excellent question. So we do invest a lot of effort, a lot of time in processing that data in real time, to make sure that it's useful, and that it's also, as April mentioned earlier, that we transform it from just simply endless amounts of point data, GPS point data. We turn that into information that can be used, and actionable intelligence, as we might call it. And Flow Labs does the same. And many of our partners take our aggregated, anonymized live traffic feeds or an aggregated historic data, and they analyze that data and use it within their software, within their solution. So we do a lot of that, but it's not the whole picture, I guess, because there's a lot of merging, there's a lot of interfacing to be done. I think one of the questions someone asked earlier was around multimodal data. So TomTom, for example, only collects data from the roadways, from connected vehicles, and mobile navigation apps. We don't have a view to cyclists or pedestrian movements or bus transit. So I think that is a really important point, that this has got to be a collaborative and a partnership effort. Whoever you are, whichever software provider or platform provider you are, for a transport planner or for a traffic manager, you need the wider picture, and we're just one part of that jigsaw of data.
So Jatish, why don't you weigh in on this, because you're getting data both from the agencies as well as from TomTom and other aggregators. What role, what role do you see you're playing in kind of the data cleansing, data engineering process, and how important is that?
So the way that, April gave a very good summary of how they think about things in Maricopa and how they've been operating. And a good summary of that would be, for a lot of agencies, they're trying to turn data into insights and turn insights into decisions. That's fundamentally everything that we're all trying to do. 10 years ago, the problem was that there wasn't enough data. And now it's kind of the opposite. There's almost too much data. Agencies struggle with knowing what data they need, how to get it out of the silos, how to turn it into insights, how to turn those insights into decisions. And one of the kind of key issues has been, this concept of big data. But I guess, surprise, surprise, bigger data doesn't mean better data. You can't just say we have a gazillion petabytes of data and expect it to magically grow legs or wings and provide you the insights you need. So a large part of what we focus on Flow Labs is making this data useful through data integration. And what that means is it means combining different data sets together using our own proprietary AI and machine learning. That helps us to identify bad data, clean it out, as well as generate important and valuable insights. And so, we purely believe that integrated data is better data. And for us, we are data and infrastructure agnostic. So we pull in data not just from connected vehicles, we pull in data from hardware devices, detection devices, as well as traffic management systems. And we all integrate that all into one single geospatial standard. This approach has a number of benefits. It allows us to leverage more data than ever before. It also makes the most out of existing hardware investments that agencies have made over the last 30 years. It also allows us to build a vibrant data partner ecosystem. For example, I include TomTom in that's creating an active market for data. And that cleaning process, we've taken years and years of investment in research and development on refining our algorithms to now enable us to generate high levels of accuracy for our data, the high levels that are necessary to make critical decisions, and also provide the comprehensiveness of the data that allows agencies to get a holistic picture of what's happening, to get a full understanding of the different trade-offs. Transportation is complex. You can't just think about travel times anymore. You have to think about travel times and safety and emissions. And that's what the technology allows us to do, to extract those valuable insights out of the data. I think that the next step after that is, how do you turn that data into decisions? And data is only as useful as what you can do with it. So we're not content with just having a bunch of data just sitting there. We've also been leveraging our own AI to help agencies predict and optimize transportation decisions. We've already deployed our Optimus technology in the Maricopa region to optimize traffic signals with Town of Gilbert, one of the Maricopa, one of the agencies in Maricopa. And over the course of the coming months, our AI technology is also going to be used for a number of new features, including congestion prediction, crash prediction, safety countermeasure recommendation. So once you have built that extremely strong, accurate data foundation, you can now start leveraging other technologies on top of that to generate even more value out of the same data.
So Jadish, that all sounds
Add
very...
one other thing to that, which is,
Sure, go ahead, Doug.
yeah,
Please go ahead.
one other interesting pivot or change in the industry in the last 5 years, I think, is that we used to be concerned only about collecting data about travel demand and how the road network is used, but less so about the supply of road network space and the efficiency of existing signals. And I think that's again where Flow Labs has really found a niche which is really important, because that at the end of the day determines how well you can optimize road networks, how well you can improve the efficiency of the operation of the road network, how you're responding to incidents better, whether you're planning roadworks and work zones more effectively, delivering diversion routes. You mentioned that earlier, April. So yeah, really, it opens up a whole range of new applications of data, and it all depends on that pivot away from not just travel demand, but to travel supply and transport road network supply, and using that more effectively.
So no, that's really important. So Jadish, you explained this very logically, and it seems like something that everybody should be doing, but everybody's not. And I'm curious, from an agency perspective, what kind of hurdles do you face when you talk to an agency that's interested in making this this move? I mean, Maricopa County, it sounds like, based on what April has said, has kind of been in the game for over a decade, learning as they go, having some growing pains, but they've stuck it out. And so and they're willing to make that transition, but it is a journey. So for agencies that are interested in starting that journey, what kind of problems do you see, and what kind of advice can you give them?
I think the real challenge for a lot of agencies is that they are responsible for investing large amounts of taxpayer money and to deploy critical infrastructure. So getting it wrong is a bad thing. It's a huge responsibility that we know that a lot of agencies take very, very seriously. And so they're looking to, minimize cost, minimize risk, but maximize quality. And so we take it on ourselves as a vendor to minimize that risk as much as possible. So that means reducing the cost of deployment, reducing the time of deployment, and reducing the cost of procurement as well. And so from a technology standpoint, the key benefit of what we do is that it's incredibly lightweight and scalable. It can take days, even on the smallest deployment, to weeks to deploy. It costs very little because we're leveraging all of the existing infrastructure that's available. And also it can scale up pretty quickly as well. I think from really the connected vehicle data approach and the integrated data approach, which leverages investments in hardware that have already happened and leverages data that is already available through our data partners and through great partners like TomTom, is an incredibly scalable and rapid approach that requires very low risk for agencies. So when we're talking about connected vehicle data, we're obviously not talking about DSRC or C-V2X. We mean a connected device that is already embedded in or on a vehicle. Cellular modules, telematics devices, GPS devices, smartphones. The best thing is that this data is already everywhere. So for example, the latest research on deployment of OBUs for C-V2X kind of pinned a number around 46,000 deployed across the US. even kind of TomTom alone with a 20 to 35 penetration rate is in the tens of millions of connected vehicles driving on roadways in the US right now. And so that data can be turned off and turned on at any scale very, very quickly. Provides a huge amount of granularity, but it also means that agencies as well can use that data very quickly. One of the challenges as well is that if you're just supplying data to an agency, they have to build the skills and the resources to actually do something with that data. It's really hard for a transportation agency to hire data scientists, data analysts, software engineers, because you're competing against software companies that can pay a lot more in cash as well as equity to do that same job. So it's a pretty thin labor market. But being able to provide tools that allow them to use that data on day one allows them to get value from it as quickly as possible so that they can really drive that business case. At the end of the day, if you're providing a technology, it has to have an impact on the community that the agencies serve. And the quicker you can show that, the better, the easier it is to kind of keep going. I think the final thing here is that what we see a lot of agencies do is they're a little bit scared of technology in some ways. Usually when they start embarking on, hey, we want to deploy technologies, they hire a consulting team to build them a technology strategy plan. It takes 2 years and huge amounts of money and effort. And in 2 years' time, the entire technology landscape has completely shifted. We've seen progressive agencies like April and Maricopa County and Maricopa region as a whole focus on doing pilot projects and doing them pretty quickly. It allows them to spend very little amount of money to actually go and deploy it, test it out, see if it works quickly. And then if it succeeds, expand. If it doesn't succeed, great, try the next one. And I think progressive agencies like Maricopa are really kind of leading the way. And they're a very complicated region with a lot of different stakeholders, but they've managed to get every agency in the region kind of aligned onto one technical direction, and they're really pushing the boundaries of innovation. We think that's a great model for other agencies to follow.
Right.
Thanks,
And
Janice.
just jumping in there for a minute. So one of the things that has helped our region quite a bit, not just Maricopa County, but our region in general, is our willingness to pilot certain things. So we start with very scalable things that are obtainable. We see the outcome. It may not be the one that we're looking for, good, right, wrong, indifferent, whatever it is. But it gives us a taste of what are the challenges. Is this product really what we're looking for? Is it addressing a use case, right? And sometimes we pivot and it's like, well, it didn't address this use case, but there's a different use case that I see it addressing. So I'll talk about one of the use cases that we're doing with Flow Labs a little bit. So in our region, we've deployed a lot of adaptive signal control technology. So my background is more so in traffic signal operations. And so we've done a whole lot with automated traffic signal performance measures. We've done a whole lot with adaptive signals. And then we get a little bit of questions regarding, well, what is the true benefit of these, right? And sometimes they're hard to quantify in the sense of it. In my thought process, I want to see more than just travel times, right? Because if you're, making all the signals green across and holding them for 5 minutes, yeah, your travel time should be like phenomenal. But what are the other impacts that we are not seeing when we're not capturing, those different data sets? And so I got really interested in Flow Labs in the sense of, okay, you're grabbing all these other data sources that we traditionally don't grab. What else could you tell us about the system? And so they've overlaid our own data on top of the data that they have on their end so that we can kind of see what those outcomes are. And sometimes what has come to light for us is sometimes those adaptive systems, they tend to be a black box, right? Like they tend to manipulate the traffic signal controller to do what it wants to do. So the data that we have on our side, yeah, the system is going to be great because they've manipulated to say what they wanted to say. So on the roadway itself, what is the real story? So we're missing that piece. And so that came to fruition for us just recently, honestly, that it's like, okay, the use case that we were really looking for may not be able to be addressed with Flow Lab solution, but let's pivot. And, the door is open to see what other insights can Flow Lab offer us because we're all trying to improve safety at the end of the day. And there's a lot of federal dollars out there that are related to infrastructure improvements, predictive, like, crash prediction and whatnot. So we're pivoting at this point, trying to see what other insights can the system bring for overall roadway network so that we can use it for more infrastructure upgrades and whatnot. So one other thing before you transition, I see in the chat box, there's a lot of questions regarding just data quality, data validation. So me being in transportation, I think I used to be real stuck on that in the sense of, can you validate this data? Where's your data source coming from? And what is your ground truth? How does your data compare to what the ground truth is? What are the variables, right? So it took me a while, honestly, to change my thought process on that, because at the end of the day, what I'm looking for in operations is more trends. I need to know where the hotspots are. I need to know where my problem areas are. And then I can do a deep dive into, crash data, volume, collection, other insights or whatever data that we can get on our end that is more granular. But at the end of the day, try to be forward thinking. Really need some more insights as far as where the hotspots are. And a lot of the times in the work that we do, you're kind of just all over the place in the sense of, you get a call from a citizen that is complaining about their specific their neighborhood, and that's their voice of concern. But at the end of the day, that might not be your most problematic location. It's just the most vocal. So we're looking for tools to really target, where do we really need to be focusing our attention on, our resources on. Where are those areas that really we can make a larger improvement? And sometimes it's not about the real data, but the trends that you're able to see with only a 5 or 10% penetration. That's good for our targeted efforts, but it may not be good for determining if the signal is warranted, right? I would advise to use caution with data platforms when they're using predictive measures to use it to that extreme. But we have other resources to get that granular data that we need to go down that path.
So April, you're not off the hook. That was great. I really appreciated it. I felt like it was a bit of a confession. Data engineer or traffic engineers are really smart. They're really left brain. It's pretty black and white. We have a process. We've had it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're talking about is a complete cultural change.
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen? Because every time I walk into a TMC, the people who are there know their stuff better than anybody, but getting them to think about different ways to do their job is super hard. Not because they're so smart and because they know it better than anybody. And so somebody, imagine somebody walking in and saying, "Hey, I've got this software that you don't have to go do a study for every signal." And they're like, "What?" How did you make that? How is that cultural? I know it didn't happen overnight. How did that cultural change come about?
Right. I think I am lucky that I've only been at Maricopa County for less than 10 years, right around 9, I think. So that culture was kind of already instilled because they had a big push to really deploy ITS into most strategies in our region. And so I came into that, but yeah, it took me a bit to understand that myself. But I think the reality of it was I was only one person wearing multiple hats, and you don't have time to really do everything, right? And so you needed more resources to be able to, put something in your face, so you can actually have targeted approaches like that. But it took me a bit to get there, because at the end of the day, I'm an engineer. I'm very I have my process, you have your guidance, like the AASHTO Green Book, the MUTCD, they've been around for a very long time. Here are your guidance documents, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, as we transition, we have to think outside of the box. And, tools and working in data has really pushed me that way, because there's a better way at the end of the day. I think with all these technology solutions coming out, and I'm even just talking about like Power BI and tools like that, there's a lot of powerful tools out there, You just have to be creative on how you use them. And I think I was lucky to be exposed to a lot of those things. So I understood that there was a better way of doing what we were doing, because at the end of the day, the reality of it is you're not going to get more people. You may or may not be able to get a consultant on board, depending on, timely anyways is always a concern too. Like everything is hot in the moment that it's hot, but you don't have time to really procure another contract for another consultant to work with you. That might be a year later. And then, that hot topic's no longer the hot topic. So it's just realities for me as far as like, I'm not going to be able to recruit more people because they're not going to give us more money to hire more people. But yet we have this limitation of, hiring timely consultants. So it was all kind of just this balancing act in the sense of, okay, how do we progress? How do we work with data and get it to be transformed into information, into tools that are really useful for us? We have all these data sets, but a lot of times they're only useful if you can overlay them on top of each other. And me, quite honestly, being a civil engineer, I can do basic things in Excel. I'm actually probably more advanced in Excel than some other people. But at the end of the day, building those charts is very, very time consuming, and you build it and it works that one time, but you can't recreate it. Well, you can recreate it, but it takes you just as long to recreate it for the next scenario that comes down the line. So it's just recognizing for me that there's a better way to do it, and technology is advancing so quickly that it was just very eye-opening to me in the sense of there's other tools out there to get to where I need to be, and I'm not that person that has that background, but somebody else in the room might.
Okay, Doug, so Jadish mentioned, so I kind of am a little hesitant, but I'm going to ask you anyways. So in, for transportation, public transportation providers, our history is we think about connected data not in the same way that you do. We tend to think about connected data as DSRC and now CV2X. And, we have this long sordid history in the United States about about how we've deployed or not deployed DSRC. And now we're on that path on CV2X. In Europe and in Asia, that's been a different experience. And so I'm curious from your perspective. I mean, there are a number of agencies that have done DSRC and CV2X deployments. Not at scale the way that it's done in Europe or Asia, but still, we have made some very significant investments. How does TomTom use that data, and how does TomTom? What can we learn in the United States from what's happened in Europe and in Asia with respect to deployment of the other kind of connected vehicle data, not what you're generally collecting?
Well, it's a very tough question, and also yeah, I could go way off topic on that. I suppose think of the SaaS solution of Flow Labs as effectively a C2X solution, right? We've got CV2X solution because we have a fleet of connected vehicles out there, floating car vehicles, floating car data, it's sometimes described as, and that's your connection to the real world. And then platform providers and data aggregators and users like Flow Labs can then, pull out and extract intelligence and information from that. And then they can then use that downstream with following decision making. You can use that downstream to deliver impact on the road network. And as April said earlier, that's something we all want to do. It's fascinating hearing your story there, April, because mine's very, very similar. I came from an appraisal and modeling background, but I felt so frustrated with how difficult it was to get insights, readily insights about the road network, and also how frustrating it is for most transport planners, I'll be honest, and most transport people in transport sector. It's really hard to make an impact. And so the beauty of technology is being able to make that impact, and to make these connections. So I think what you're seeing here, and you know, just with the people in this room and with the example of Maricopa, is we have a C to V2X environment, an ecosystem in this, and that holds huge potential. And then another interesting observation, just listening to you talk there, Ip, is things between Europe and US are very different, and you mentioned that as well, Scott. But the whole environment and for the use of technology, for the adoption of technology, and also the allocation of funding, the appetite of authorities and agencies towards new technologies is different. It's very forward-looking in the US, and you have a, you know, not just a ripe investor landscape in the US, but I think there is that genuine interest in using new technologies, and there's a real appetite not only to understand the benefits, but to realize those benefits. In Europe, we have a lot of talk about the benefits, but no one's really made the case to go ahead and use those technologies. But it's demonstrated, the impact is demonstrated with return on investment at the end of the day. If European authorities dedicated even a tiny proportion of their maintenance budgets for hardware towards a software as a service subscription in the way that Maricopa and others are doing in the US, then they would realize those benefits far more quickly, far more effectively. So I think if I was to encourage you to do anything as a result of this webinar, it would be to experiment, to test out these solutions, because I think without experimentation and without trying out these things, you really cannot realize a return on investment and change or shift the needle in managing the road network. The sort of technology that Flow Labs is offering is something I would have loved when I was appraising the road network 10 to 15 years ago. It's appraisal technology or evaluation technology in your hands. It's the ability to look back and then analyze the current, the present, and then also make decisions for the future, and not only predict what happens, but then look back and say, well, was that prediction, how good was that prediction? How well can I actually manage the network? And there's nothing more fulfilling than being able to make an impact, either to safety, emissions, to the flow of traffic, to help the economy in the cities and in our countries. So
okay, so we're running to the end of time. I want to kind of end this with a question and an opportunity for Jadish to kind of like say one last word. Jadish, as public agencies do deploy CEV2X, assuming that they do, are you going to be able to ingest that data into your platform?
Our platform is data and infrastructure agnostic, which means that we're able to integrate any type of data, whether it's connected vehicle data from the vehicles themselves on the geolocations, whether it's a detection system data providing data. Really, our system is designed to be future-proof, and that's kind of one of the things that we believe kind of makes sense for agencies, because the reality is you don't really know where technology is going to move in 10 years' time. However, you do know some things about what the data structure is going to look like. Data is not going to change a huge amount in some respects. For geospatial data, it is going to be a geolocation, a timestamp, and some additional metadata. That underlying structure is going to be fundamentally the same for, quite frankly, the rest of the time. How you process it, what kind of information sets you can get in that data set are going to be changing, but really the structure allows us to be future-proofed.
Okay. Any final word, because we are at the deadline? Any last words you want to say, Jadish?
Yeah, I think what's very clear here is that most agencies, you're looking to turn data into insights, insights into decisions. And data is going to be the fuel that drives all of our transportation systems. Connected vehicle data is already available at scale to help capture important insights, generate performance measures that allow you to test out different technologies, different strategies, and measure their impact. Leverage the right tools, leverage the right technologies, and work quickly. The technology landscape is changing. Things are improving with every passing month. Try new technologies out, test if they work, and keep expanding from there. You don't need long-term strategic plans. You just need to take a reasonable, small risk and start making an impact on your communities.
Doug, any final parting words?
I think no, you've said it really well, Jatish. I suppose there's one question that's popped up in the chat here, which I wanted to address. I heard a fantastic statistic earlier, really interesting, that a third of all accidents occur around roadworks and around jams, and jams could be at intersections, of course. So through a combination of technology and data and experimentation by agencies, just imagine what impact we could have on the safety risks around those intersections. We can really improve things for our communities, for our citizens and people. So with that, over to April for last words.
April, any last thoughts you want to share?
I think don't be scared of technology at the end of the day. It can be quite challenging, but at the end of the day, I think at some point we will see big mandates from USDOT, FHWA for pushes for connected vehicle technology to be implemented, you know, and it only helps our space grow. And so don't be scared to dip your toe in the water and see what it's like. Like that's how we started with, you know, one SRC radio being hung and see where it goes from there. So a lot of good experiences.
Well, I want to thank you all. This was a really good panel. You guys covered a lot of territory, a lot of really important questions, and I want to thank the people who were listening. We had a really great turnout. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. I think on the webinar announcement, you know how to reach each of these individuals. And so if you have follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to ITS America or to them directly. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Victoria. Thank you all very much. You did great.
Thank you, everyone. And with that, we will close the webinar. The webinar will be available online and on YouTube within the following days. So thank you so much.